Well, let's get started. Redesigning everything, lesson learned in collaborative modeling. I am Alberto Brandolini, Dio Brand on Twitter. Avanscoperta is the company I work for, and the story is about many things that happened in the last year. So I will do a quick historical progress, and then let's see where we are right now. 2013, I published this original blog about EventStorming. It's now kind of outdated. A lot of things already happened, but yes, that was the thing that started a lot of things. 2 years later, I started writing this book, and it seemed like the obvious thing to do. I had a lot more things to say than what could a blog post could fit. And yes, it started a whole machine, which is making, a lot of what I do rolling. And a lot of what I do has to do with online facilitation, also with domain-driven design architecture, but I also run a company. I used to be an agile coach. I started coding 37 years ago, so there's a lot of these influences in whatever I do. And but the main idea about EventStorming is actually simple, and is put all the key people in the same room and have them build an event-based model of the whole business. A picture is better than words, so this is more or less what we can expect. And actually, this is a small picture. We ran workshop with 35 people in the same room. Well, the room was quite large indeed, but yes, that's the same collaborative action. A lot of people working on the same artifact, multiple parallel conversation, and actually a little bit of fun. Well, sometimes even a lot of fun if we were lucky. EventStorming has three main formats: big picture, that we run for corporate retrospectives, for redesigning architecture, organization reboots, sometimes designing entire companies, project kickoffs, and that's where you have a lot of people. And then there's mostly around discovery. Then process modeling and software design, which are a little bit more tailored into, design of processes with a little of technology, or design of processes and the underlying technology at the same time. That was the main idea. Why is it interesting? It's because it just works. There's really a lot of learning up front because we are trying to solve the puzzle together. And one of the continuous miracles is developers starting to ask tough and important, meaningful business questions, started getting curious about the business. And there's nothing wrong in having a team of good developers who are actually quite curious and interested about the business. If you think about the alternative, there's no reason not to. And it's a really massive learning, better team engagement, connecting with real stakeholders, understanding their needs, a lot of anticipated risk reduction, especially in the political space. We see the people that might be unhappy about our roadmap and things like this. And also in terms of software architecture, we can see the natural boundaries of the software. So if you're looking for bounded context, the DDD way, or if you want to highlight the possible boundaries for microservices, it's really helpful in this scenario. And since we are talking events with the business, that's basically having the red carpet to an event-driven architecture. We see which are the events people are talking about, and the business conversation and the software conversation are getting really close together. Similar language, very little translation, possible zero. And that's exactly how this conversation should happen. It's fun, it's full of information, it's anticipated, it works. And of course, I just like being in a room full of colors. You see, I still have the need for these objects nearby. Actually, a hotspot fell down, sorry. But I love being in places like this. So this is actually me in the right space. But I also had opinions. That's 2018. What is the best tool for remote EventStorming? A lot of people were asking me about this, and my answer was a plane ticket. And then, of course, shit happened because we got in 2020, and that's a bastard everybody knows. And ideas like put all the key people in the same room, well, that's forbidden. I cannot put all the people in the same room, 40 people in the same room, breathing one in front of the other one, touching themselves without mask, or the whole day wearing a mask in the same room. I don't want to do this. This is forbidden too. All these people together, no mask, gone. this idea, the best tool for remote event storming, a plane ticket. What an idiot. Why should I say something like this? I mean, now we have a different constraint and we have to do something different. Talking about the business, talking about exactly the adventure, the ride of our company. My company was doing public trainings and this business stopped. And then we were doing private trainings and it stopped too because we were traveling all the time and we couldn't do all the people in the same room. I was doing consulting for workshop and this stopped too. And we were organizing public event, live conferences. And while in March last year, they stopped. Of course, this is a virtual conference. We started organizing virtual conferences too. But that was March. That was exactly when the pandemic spread out. And I said, like, oh, great entrepreneur. I hedged my my bets, and we had also little software development activity. Okay, when I can save something, I didn't put all my eggs in the same basket. But turns out this basket was going to get crushed too because it was working for an industry that was under the pressure of the pandemic. So we had the crunch of 80% of the budget. Okay, so this is where we were. All I got was in March, April last year, all I got was free time. Basically nothing to do. Nothing I could do on the market was viable anymore. Or I could do it as an outlaw, but can you actually do this? Or no, I had free time. But I had a mission. I just like there's things which is still working and the landscape is different. Not saying that the new landscape is better, actually it's worse, but we can play with different rules. So in one way, this is how I felt. Michael Jordan playing baseball instead of basketball, but still trying to be good at it. And just like I cannot play basketball, I prefer basketball, but this is where I am right now. And of course, I'm not Michael Jordan. I mean, there's so many reasons why. So this is just a metaphor. But I had to become good in a different sport. And I had time to experiment. Also, business-wise, we were preaching a lot about anti-fragility and the opportunity of learning from a crisis situation. Well, let's see if we actually learn the lesson right. And if we could actually maximize our reaction to a new scenario. Like if we were going to collapse, then that was basically saying crap to the planet for the past year. So I had to face the challenge in many ways. And the first thing, maybe not exactly the first thing that I've done, but one of the first notable action was I ended up writing 2 articles, which is kind of weird because one of the articles was half empty, like talking about remote event storming and mostly discussing why remote event storming would never be the same thing as on-site event storming. But then I also have to write one half-full article. They were both quite long, by the way. And this is event storming in pandemic times. And this is where I talk about, no, actually, we are playing by different rules. And given the rules are the same for everybody, there's a lot of value that we can do, which is still better than the alternatives. Actually, the alternatives, in one way, they also got worse. But come on, there is a problem, and the thing that you can do is just writing 2 blog posts, which is one the opposite of the other one, was telling a lot of things about the state of my brain at that time. I was basically like Tom Hulce in Animal House. If you remember, what should I do? Follow the angel, follow the devil. Already hard to make a choice. And well, the only good news, we came out with a beautiful new blog layout, and I'm still happy about it. So let's see what actually happens in our scenario. The first, the flagship of our consulting and discovery activity was the big picture. And so if you see this, we realize that this is no longer valuable. Doesn't mean we don't need anything like a big picture. That was very important. And in a workshop like this, with a lot of people discussing the same business model, the business flow end-to-end, there's still a lot to learn. And we could see the difference of doing this versus not doing it. But if you take proximity away, we realized that we were losing a lot. So first thing is we were losing the spontaneous parallel conversation. It's just like while a lot of people spend or wasted their time suggesting me, why don't you go breakout rooms? Because breakout rooms are not spontaneous. In a Zoom channel, you need to be intentional about the conversation, while with physical proximity, you just bump into a random person and you start a conversation because now you know that this random person on this spot is exactly the expert you were looking for, and you start the conversation. Zoom is not spontaneous at all. It could support parallel conversation, but spontaneous, no. And also a lot of low friction tools. I mean, pens and markers and stickies, you don't need training to write on a sticky note, while you need training for Miro and maybe Zoom and so on. A lot of stuff that was hidden was the commitment. The thing, this workshop, this person came in the office today, is here only for the day. It just was creating a space like, oh, we got to finish this for the end of the day because we don't have any other options. There's hotels, there's plane flight. This is the only situation that we can have, and we can make it work. There's a lot less commitment in one more remote Zoom meeting, maybe with just a Miro board. Oh, come on, we can finish tomorrow. I don't feel like urgency. And we had great team building side effects in in-person workshop. This is not happening anymore. And we had emerging time management, like, come on, guys, it's already 4 o'clock. We got to finish by 6 and we are late. So can we just hurry up? And it was just a matter of looking around. You see people saying like, yeah, you can hurry up. Okay. And the third time approach, I got it from rugby. I mean, at 6 o'clock or 5 o'clock, depending on the country, 4 o'clock if it's Norway, you just say like, okay, that's great. We can go home. But you're not going home. I mean, there's a few people maybe hanging around, maybe asking you for let's go and have a drink together. And it's not the drink, it's actually the conversation which happens, which is telling a lot about the things that served us during the workshop, but didn't have a supporting conversation. And this is actually great. And if we get into remote, we are losing a lot of this. There's only a single, sometimes annoying conversation. And sometimes silence, because you are too scared to start this conversation. There's a friction connected to the tech stack, there's lower commitment, there is no team building. It's just like very hard to have team building. Sometimes, actually, the team is a lot less forgiving with the other one. Zoom fatigue is real, we need a smaller slot. And also, how do you end the Zoom meeting? Oh, come on, it's 6 o'clock, guys, I gotta go. Boop. Disappeared, which is kind of annoying. Maybe you still had to have something, but this extra tail is vanished, doesn't happen anymore. Okay, I'm not crying, but this is state of the thing. So in general, we had to chop things in smaller pieces, but chopping one day in 2 halves was not delivering the total. So what could be delivered in 1 day now takes 3 half days, or maybe more. And maybe these 3 half days are not even in the 7 week, in the same week. So maybe they just end up being spread in 2 different weeks. And I had some magic to deliver in only 1 day, and this magic is gone. That was feeling kind of depressing. So I checked for the alternatives, and this is what I found. Basically a desert, nothing available. And so we had to hammer and try to improve what we had. So first thing we do is we start experimenting on ourselves. Well, I had the perfect customer. I had a company that I was already running, didn't have to have negotiation. I could prototype stuff. And so we tried remote online EventStorming on ourselves, and we had a well-defined business case, like reinventing each one of our processes, because we were delivering on-site classes, and that was not viable at all. So we had to reinvent everything, catalog and delivery. And we started looking for what needed to change. We started looking for tools. We started looking for empty spots. And yes, we did. We delivered something. And of course, we had nothing to do. So that was great. The second thing that I have to work on is my tech stack. So, I mean, every time I look at this picture, it really looks messy. And now I look at the real thing. I'm exactly on the same desk, and it's even messier than at this moment. But I actually bought a large second screen, and I'm standing, so I can look at this screen is exactly same level of my eyes. I have a stand-up desk, so I'm actually standing, and I can even be jumping if needed. I have a professional microphone. I had to buy a new laptop because the old one was overheating by sharing high-definition pictures on Zoom, or I don't know exactly what was the reason, but it was kind of getting hot, and there was no way to get out. So I needed a new laptop too, and high-resolution camera, new light. I had to look more beautiful. I mean, this magic didn't happen, but yes, I put a little money on this one, and I had to. Well, the news, tech stack does make a difference. Actually, the most impacting thing of all is just like the stand-up desk. That actually makes me feel better. I have a little bit more reactivity during every discussion. I mean, the best thing is actually not product placement, but yes, I wanted to show the physical object in this case. You couldn't see the brand. It's actually just making me happy to be standing and the stand-up desk. But this is also sad news. Why is this sad? Because the tech stack doesn't make too much difference. So after a few months of doing online workshops and classes and with different people, this is a little network of messy things that we find out are repeatedly happening. So the combined effect of this stack is, well, if you have a bad microphone, you end up having a cracking sound every time you speak. So what happens in the brain of everybody else in the room is you just sound annoying. I mean, it's not you. As a human being, you can be a very good person and even enjoyable, but being in a Zoom meeting with you, if you have a bad microphone, can actually be terrible. Same goes if you have a bad internet connection. So you've been in those meetings where a person is starting to talk and you feel like, oh, please, not this person again. I mean, come on, every time this person is talking, it's just like, can you hear me? And no, I don't wanna have my ears suffer. And but our brain is also making shortcuts. It's just like trying, like, no, it's not this person, it's a tech stack. I couldn't feel aggressive towards this person or annoyed by this person. I'm annoyed by the tech stack. But our brain is not so sophisticated. So it will make the connection between this person, the pain in my ears. Come on, please, no. Another consequence is just empathy quickly goes away. We are a lot less forgiving, even with people that we would never be aggressive or passive aggressive in normal situation, but online, oh, come on, I have very, very little patience. And so, no, same goes for if the video is switched off. I have no empathy for little frames with initials. I mean, this is just people judging me. And I don't feel that I need to have any empathy. People are telling me things, so maybe correcting something, and I don't see their faces, and I feel like I'm putting a lot of my energy in the discussion, and I'm discussing with initials. Oh, come on! No, there's no empathy in this area. And so I had my little statistics, like the people that I labeled like, yeah, let's say bad person after a meeting. 99% they have the camera off. Not their fault, but strong correlation between this information. Still on the tech stack, I had a very large screen. I could see everything. I have no idea if the other people are seeing what I see. So there's a lot of extra conversation that has to do with continuous clarification. This is what I see, blah, blah, blah. But the consequence, the annoying thing here, is actually bad microphone, low internet speed, no double screen. It's all related to money. And the annoying consequence is that we saw the gap of freelancers and consultants actually buying appropriate hardware for their own profession, and the employees of even large companies having subpar hardware, but also having subpar conversation because of this. And this is actually annoying because it actually has, yeah, social consequences. Doesn't really work well. A little side thought, a lot of people were asking me about, like, oh, well, you have the chance to do workshop in using different technology. Have you thought about virtual reality and so on? And just to avoid having this question later in the Q&A, I'm sorry if I'm making anybody upset, you can run a quick experiment. You can tell your boss about having this one-day-long workshop, having all the business stakeholders wearing VR, and ask a company to buy 30 headsets and have them delivered to every workshop participant before the workshop. So just a lead-up logistic nightmare, not to mention the budget. 3, don't forget to mention the setup and training before the workshop, including proper safety at home. Like, you don't want to have your board members just like blind and moving around in their house. That's not exactly what you want to do, pretending to move sticky notes on a virtual wall. Now, just like, if it goes this, count the seconds before getting fired. So we are not there yet. Maybe it's promising, not yet. So don't even bother asking. Or if you do, just face the consequences. And this is very important instead. Here, I'm not joking. The more we get into a more remote world, the more we realize, well, the bottleneck is our brain. Our brain is taking shortcuts, it's still cheating us in many different ways. And if you haven't read this book, I would say you have to read it. If you have read it, you know what I'm talking about. It's just like, the brain is divided in 2 main systems, ideal in this theory. System 1 is quick, doing pattern matching, doing quick decision and using little energy. System 2 is using a lot more energy, single-threaded, is letting us depleted if you use all the energy, and is used for more complicated stuff. But the more we stay on Zoom, we're just turning a conversation from being a normal conversation, system 1, into a more complicated system where our brain is doing a lot of extra compensation. So we get depleted, and this is where we are. So it turns out that the most important currency in online meetings is managing our brain energy. It's not time, it's quality time. The time is actually an option to deliver something valuable. And the real constraint is, do we have any brain energy left? So that's the thing we have to manage. Let me be more explicit. In terms of energy management, it's 3 hours for a workshop activities, very close to the maximum achievable. There is no idea of a final sprint to finish because we are already depleted. People are yawning, they're just collapsing. Whatever you say in the last 5 minutes, you say it, but people will not get it. So multiple sessions is needed, and asynchronous contribution is still possible. Like, you can split the session, give homework to people, but it's not as effective as we would like it to be. And especially when it needs validation for exploration, we need to be in the same room. We need to listen our voice. We need to feel the approval of the other people in order to be sure that we're doing the right thing. So tricky. We are not exactly where we would like to be. But there are upsides too. And one of these is we have unlimited modeling space. And this is great. We actually used a lot of this unlimited modeling space to do something that was not only EventStorming. So we had a combination on the same board of EventStorming, big picture, and business model canvas, and value proposition canvas, and, well, wordly maps, and user story mapping, and whatever it was needed in order to get a multi-perspective view over the problem. It's not about using one tool, it's about learning, seeing the problem from different corners, and, oh, that's actually great. That's something that I would like to do also in the physical world, but I never had a room with so many walls that I could use. And I was using, 12, 15 meters with my EventStorming. And so, walls were taken already, and we couldn't get exactly where I wanted. But asynchronous plus unlimited space, well, that's actually great. So we could play with, having visible grammar, having visual clues and anchor. We actually improved a little in this one, became more sophisticated, and this became a long-lasting artifact with multiple modeling perspectives and relationship between different boards that could be, used at different moments in time. And yes, Also, we could make the evolution progress visible. I already mentioned the different tools. Some of the experiments that we are running right now, we are basically trying to do almost everything on Miro and getting rid of the concept of wiki. While we have one point, we could just make the board navigable and easy to read for the newcomers. It takes a lot of extra gardening, like wiki is needed, but we are not. It's not so bad, and we're actually using it as a common ground between business, UX, and tech teams. We're kind of happy, not perfect, but we're getting better every day. And another little consequences is just like with smaller meetings, we actually got rid of the idea of finishing the exploration, but visualizing our growing learning. We needed to have a little bit of the beginning of clarification of something, and then, okay, now this problem is visible. Should we finish it? No, there is no time, it's late. And actually, in many cases, we have a lot of half-finished stuff, and we never bother finishing them. They just need to serve to solve the problem, and then we come back to this to look at other corners of the same problem. But asynchronous update is viable. Meta information becomes more relevant, like, are you actually happy with this partial result? How can you take separate partial from finished? We needed to visualize a little bit more meta information. Little things a lot along the way. Another thing that we really like is copy and move became our standard. Something that we couldn't clearly do on paper, like make a copy, branch a paper in a storming. I mean, it's 500 sticky notes. Who's gonna make a copy? No, you have one model and you play with this. But now we are branch and merge really, really easily, and we add a lot of new layers of information. And so the actual recipe, the honest one for big picture EventStorming, the first column that you can see is actually the old in-person recipe: invite the right people, hack the room, run a chaotic exploration, and force the timeline, then play people and system. Then at the beginning, I was basically running small time box experiment for every single step, trying something, see if it was working, rolling back, trying something else. Okay, now I see what I should go next, and so on. And well, actually, this stayed. I have a little bit more of a repeatable recipe. Actually, frame sorting and pivotal events are many times the same step, just from two orthogonal views. But every single step that we do is a time box experiment, because we need to do something in order to see better what is going to be the next step. But yes, okay, we have a new recipe. It is doable. It's actually, the outcome is harder to achieve, especially the complete walkthrough, but is a lot more flexible and reusable for later advantages. So yeah, kind of a mixed feeling here. In general, incomplete is a new default state. It's very hard to finish something because there is no end of the day, there is no plan, there is no urgency. The outcome, we ended up using this to redesign entire business lines. We redesigned the workshop format. We redesigned startups that had to play with the new market, transform the organization. Yeah, done. That's the part I'm quite happy. And a few lessons learned. Summary: it takes more time. Digital divide is there. Unlimited space provide option. Asynchronous is useful, but people need to be heard. There's a whole in collaborative strategic decision making. This is where companies are getting dumber right now. We were optimized for taking decisions together in the same place. We were already a remote company. We were missing the moment of collaborative decision making. Sometimes it takes one day to create a good context for a good conversation. This day is never happening. As a result, some companies are a little dumber. They might realize it or not. And in terms of facilitation, it's just creating a lot more weight on the facilitator. So sometimes we needed 2 people when we had 1. And just because we cannot ask participants in most companies to be fluent in Miro or Mural. And so the facilitator will have to take over this responsibility. which is actually annoying, and one of the reasons why I actually favor the old one, because you shouldn't need mediators for your thinking, and now you need somebody in the middle between your thinking and the visualization. Okay, that's basically the end of the big picture part. That was the messier and the more complicated. Let's see what happens to process modeling and software design, which are the two things which are a little bit closer to the software development perspective, even if this step is still badly necessary for kicking off projects. What about software design and process modeling? Well, they tend to just happen as a way of bringing a more sophisticated grammar inside a big picture. So what we can see in here is just like a discussion that started in a weird way. It ended up getting more refined in a couple of frames, potential bounded context later, and then we didn't explore everything, but the inside of a few boxes, actually that were something that we were running into a little better. That's a grammar that we're using for the process modeling. Little changes. Yes, I am 50, and I started using emoji as part of my grammar. I feel kind of ashamed, but also they open up possibilities. So why not? This grammar is actually tailored around forcing people to start talking about policy. It might be automation, automatic reaction to a given event. It might be a conscious business decision taken over by a person. That's something we need to talk about because that's a thing which is more relevant to understand when discovering a system, because of interest, because of business evolution, and because of the intrinsic risk of people not telling the whole story when talking about policies. So little consequences here. Once again, facilitator is having more responsibilities. So you should probably bring a scribe with you, not only facilitator, but facilitator plus scribe. And yes, doing 2 rounds of validation, one with a simple grammar, one with a more sophisticated. Yeah, we ended up doing using this grammar earlier on. And when doing process modeling standalone, we usually have already a better scope definition, and we could play with a little bit more flexibilities. Like, yes, split and merge is actually a little bit more viable. We can do comparative modeling, like 2 teams. We have actually 2 teams in 2 different nations. The top management said, like, well, the process is the same. The people on the ground, they said, like, the process is not the same. We tried to run a general modeling session, didn't work out. We had 2 separate modeling sessions. They work out great. And then we actually looked the outcome and they looked very much the same. So we say, like, okay, now we know it's the same process, and we could say this, but it was actually working quite well in terms of visualizing the commonalities and the differences. That was quite effective. And so when it comes to process modeling, I mean, we still have cracking microphones and all the stuff you can have in Zoom, but it works like a charm to design new businesses because it focuses you on the step and all the decision in the middle. It makes you focus on the connection between a fact, an action, and the consequences, and works really, really well, both in starting from scratch and redesigning old system. It works really well. But the key question that both process modeling and software design we're trying to answer, the main challenge, it was happening in presence, now it can happen online too, is how to make specialists with different backgrounds collaborate towards a common goal. And it turned out that the abstraction we were already using, well, it survived pretty well. And the abstraction is cooperative games. That's an idea I actually borrowed from one of the first books from Ariston Coburn. I mean, this is kind of like 20 years old now, but it was just like the gate opener for me to get into the world of Agile. And what's the idea of cooperative games? These are the games where people are not playing one against the other, but they are playing as a team, finding the best collaboration in order to beat the game. And so I just needed to turn EventStorming into a game, and I need to make the rules of the game. And for process modeling, they are simple. every path should be completed, the color grammar should be respected, stakeholders should be reasonably happy, hotspots should be addressed. So there's something wrong, we should have a conversation about it. In terms of player interaction, it just became something interesting because we lost all the informal way of coordinating, but we ended up trying something different. Like one of the tools that really worked well is something that we could adapt from mob programming, which is a quick time box temporary leadership, which is a funny way to say, for the next 7, 5, 4 minutes, 3 minutes, you are in charge. You can do whatever you want with the modeling artifact, no question asked. But the person in charge needs to establish what is the protocol. Like, would you like to get feedback from the audience? Would you like them to be quiet? Just like, let me solve this. Can you please stay silent for 3 minutes? I will show what I have in mind, and then we can move on. And defer feedback, silent feedback, on non-verbal feedback, only visual, and having a scribe to help me when I'm talking, and so on. Every team could, or every person can actually go for the perfect combination, and yeah, and that's the way you can beat the game. It's a group. This group of people have to define their own interaction to be successful at modeling. But this started to be really, really quick. Like initially we need the structure of time boxing, and then it's just like, okay, I have a few moves that I can play. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, done. Who's next? Oh, I can see this. It's just like we are competing to improve the system, but we're not competing against each other, but against the system. And nobody is solving the whole problem. Everybody's playing with a little improvement on the system. So that is the idea, reframing mentally the expectation. Can you model everything? Can you design a process which is taking care of different type of subscribers with the possible different option? No, I cannot do this. That's too hard to think. Can I make a little improvement? Oh, yes, I can make a couple of initial moves, and that's easy. That is great. Can you make a little improvement without convincing the audience? Oh, that is making the thing even faster. So if we get rid of the convincing part, actually this protocol can be really, really quick. Doesn't look that quick at the beginning, and then you start accelerating a lot. And so something that looked like this in the real world, it started looking like this, and then started being a little bit more sophisticated. If you're getting into SQL SES, we might have a more sophisticated policy. And the way it looked in the physical world, now we have this into the digital world. And this is a grammar. You have to be able to read it from left to right. So given the information I see in the read model, a person is triggering a command, they sending a command to an external system or to a software component in my system. The result will be an event. This event would generate value for somebody or destroy value for somebody, or maybe we could have emoji. This event will be triggering a policy, automatic or managed by a person, and this will result in a command triggering something later. I can read it from left to right. I can use the whenever keyword with the policy, and it just works. That's a way to support a conversation. This is the enabling constraint for the conversation. So it also led me to a better definition of what EventStorming was in some way. EventStorming is in fact a conversation facilitation tool that makes software design more obvious. I mean, it's never obvious, but I'm not looking for the one-to-one relationship between the conversation and the code. That's actually messing up with the conversation. The conversation is more important because it's just like revealing all the details of how the business people think. So I want to save the conversation, making it as close as possible to the software, but not too much. That is not as precise as UML, and this is intentional. But still, we are software people. I mean, this conference is called Codecamp. So how do I get from these to software? And the recipe for me is playing with a few different tools. One thing is very easy to have a transition from this exploration to user story. And the funny thing is the milestone here is emojis, visualizing the places, the steps, the events where the value is created for stakeholders. Well, that's likely to be the end state for a user story, because I'm making somebody happy. I'm delivering some value for somebody. That's kind of something that I can deliver and is bringing value to somebody. I cannot guarantee one-to-one correspondence between an emoji and the user story, but it's a pretty good approximation and it's damn quick. A command or an event from an external system can be the start, and then from here to here, oh, that's my user story. And it's easy to spot them on the playground, and you can do mirror magic by using cards, and you can do something really, really smart here. And that's also a very easy transition from an EventStorming model to behavior-driven development testing or to end-to-end testing, but I like to see this in given, when, then. So given the precondition, a set of events that need to happen before, when a given command is happening, that's our trigger, then I'm expecting events which are making the system in a consistent state, and I'm expecting the outcome to be visible in read models, so that this is more or less end testing. I might be skipping some thens or and read models if they are redundant, but that's the way I build my BDD test after an EventStorming session. When I say after, I actually mean right after. Talking about wireframes, there's been a little bit of discussion about it, and they were part of the original model in the early days, but one of the key characteristics was speed of execution. I mean, it's really great if you can have somebody adding wireframes on the fly. They can replace read models in a few situations, but it can be really, really annoying if adding wireframes becomes really slow. And this is not exactly where I would like to be. So responsiveness is the most important thing. I've seen a few situations where just like, okay, for wireframes, we had the quick placeholder and then they were added later on. No reason not to use them except speed or hacking the conversation. And talking about the other tools, one thing I really love to do is early prototyping. After seeing the flow in an EventStorming manner, I feel like I would like to code it right away. I just would like people to get out of the meeting, and I would like to see a running prototype. I'm in love with the green bar. I would like to see the green bar at the end of the final event. And but when I try doing this, then I realized, oh, yeah, we forgot this. Oh, we forgot we don't actually know this ID. We didn't collect this information. And oh, well, we run an EventStorming session, but it's not guaranteed to find everything. Every modeling and exploration tool is giving you a good perspective on only a portion of the flow, not everything. So I need something to counterbalance EventStorming, and early prototyping is the most complementary action. And this balance between, well, conversation and coding, not a single tool is perfect and we cannot rely on the same tool. That's disappointing, but yeah, that's life. But this is not only life. This is actually exactly the nature of the whirlpool from Mike Evans. It's just like you have to play on different tools, and only when different perspectives are converging to a similar perception, maybe is right. But the thing is, this is what is working for me, which is good. Can I just give it as an advice to all of you? Well, I'm not sure, because I'm not normal. I mean, I am a DDD practitioner with 35 years of coding experience, being the owner of his own company, and I am the business owner, the product owner, the lead architect, and the user of the software. I run very efficient meetings with myself. Can I suggest the same approach to you? No, I cannot guarantee that it's going to work for you. So, and many times, whenever people were asking, I need the recipe for my development team, for me, the question were like, what is the context of your team? Like, did the team join the modeling session? I realized there were a few companies that wanted to run EventStorming before hiring the development team. And I was, why that? Like, I mean, the goal is to optimize the learning. How can the people that are not in the workshop actually learn? Oh, they will look at the documentation. That's the opposite of what I'm preaching. And do you need intermediate documentation? That's something to challenge. Sometimes you need it. Sometimes you need documentation after the fact. Sometimes you need a long meeting to understand the meaning of the word documentation, because some documentation is important, some can get redundant. And I wrote down intermediate documentation just for this. Like the thing is understanding what the team need and why. How many companies are involved? It's just like same companies or other. How good is your team? It's very tough to ask, but that's part of the game. If you have a team of seniors, you don't need that much coordination. If you have a team of juniors, you want to make sure somebody expert is around to solve problems. The thing is, in the current scenario, I might know this part very well, this domain-driven design and EventStorming, but I have no idea about this side of your problem, your domain, your process, your project size, the people, the skills, and so on. So the real thing is, you don't have to ask me, because if you're asking me how to get from EventStorming to software, I can give you, well, suggestion and hints, but not a recipe, which is guaranteed to work. The thing is, it actually works better if you ask your team after an EventStorming session, what do you really need in order to get to working code? And this question is actually the real challenge, because if you run the EventStorming and you're not throwing away any of the following artifacts, well, maybe you didn't get all the benefits of maybe the artifact, maybe EventStorming. I actually have an idea about your context, but I would like to think about squeezing things, not to force people to be in a hurry, but because there is a lot of advantages in having the brain fully on learning something and then turning them into action. Actually, if you want to kill the benefit of EventStorming, you run the workshop, make people wait, and then start development 6 months later. Then, of course, you need some intermediate documentation. Just to feel safe, we actually had to do this. And when we started, I ended up remembering everything, but people didn't feel like they remembered everything. And so we had to rerun the exploration, and we ended up wasting time, even if we haven't forgot anything. So this question, what do you really need, is actually the challenge for you. And every single tool should prove itself useful directly or indirectly in your context. So I'm getting to the closing summary, because that's exactly the timing, and maybe already overrun a little. So the overall lesson for me was, I actually enjoyed this. Keep experimenting. Even if you have a recipe, doesn't mean that it's completely consolidated, that you cannot improve this. Shake the system, do something unusual, do something different. And yes, keep experimenting, and things are not guaranteed to work. The second thing that actually helped me a lot in this month was actually being honest. Like, let's try to do this. It is a lot different from let's do this. Just spend the next 5 minutes, time box guaranteed, trying to do something. Let's see the output. I cannot guarantee that the output is good. I can only guarantee that we can waste only 5 minutes. That's actually honest. But we need experiments, because there is no guaranteed recipe. And respect your brain. Your brain is a constraint. Kahneman, System 1, System 2, your active attention hours are the most important currency for you, for your personal work, and for your organization. Don't overload your brain and manage this constraint, because that's the most important thing nowadays. Final thing, collaborative games can make the magic happen. It's just like we are gamers on table games, but we are also online gamers. People are collaborating on platform to win games, and while you can do them online, on Miro, on tools like this, that's still happening. Final thing, remote doesn't mean forced to digital. This is how I prototype this this talk, and it's on a flip chart. And paper is still better to explore, sketch, and think. We need digital to collaborate remotely, but if you have to think by yourself, well, pen and paper is still better. And this is the article with some recent proofs about it, but that's something that most of us already knew about. So that's what I wanted to say. That's my time to say goodbye. There's a few references available here. EventStorming.com, the place for the book, the places for the discussion. And yes, a few people were asking, the book is still in progress. Most of the content is pre-COVID. I rewrote a few chapters, but I'm exactly in the middle of being the first book whose second edition will be published before the first, because yeah, I have to change everything in it. So that's my end of the story. I hope I didn't annoy you. And
thank you, Alberto.
I need a drink.
That's good. You deserve it. Yeah, very inspiring conclusions and the session, of course. And it's fun to see how the whole moving things to the digital world. Sometimes they're difficult, but they also have benefits because it's like I said, it's easier to reuse certain artifacts, to collaborate. Yeah, but then, yeah, I'm also the type of people that sometimes also want to work with a pen and paper.
Yeah, I would say maybe the most important thing is EventStorming was designed with the idea of removing micro frictions and micro laziness, like even the position of the people, the availability of markers and stickers were little impediments to make magic happen. And then with Miro, a lot of this is gone. It's not Miro's fault. It's not Zoom's fault. It's just like a lot of little things that can become impediment, and they can make the magic not happen, because magic happens when it's easy. And things are changing a little, but not as quickly as somebody wanted to guarantee. And the principle still stands. And actually, our brain is lazy and is doing what is easier for the brain in every moment. Not all day long, but most of the time.
And yeah, you mentioned that for sure this the EventStorming works for you. It might work or not work for others. But is there any type of project that you would do where you would not use or need EventStorming or this sort of sessions?
Well, it depends on the product you're working. We actually had a session in DDD Europe about this. Like EventStorming pays off when you have a workflow to discover. So it might be how this company is making money, what is the product that you need. But let's say if you're making a software product, this might be a very wide category. But if you're making the new Excel, for example, you would have no benefits in exploring Excel with an EventStorming, because the event-based paradigm doesn't really work in there. But if you have the whole business flow of producing, packaging, selling, advertising, and then providing the support, that's a flow where seeing the whole story end to end really can benefit. So it really depends on the perspective. If there is something that has to do with people, roles, and ambiguity, then EventStorming plays really, really well. Maybe you don't need the whole stack. You just need to have people in the same virtual space trying to tell the same story, and then realize that the story is not the same, and have fun in the process of linearizing it.
Yeah, indeed, because I also think one of the biggest challenges for us as developers when we're starting a new project is understanding the domain as much as possible, and this gets you closer to it.
Yeah, it's the main idea for me is we can do really a lot to improve the learning, and the person try to make us learn the complexity of the domain. They usually don't know that much about learning. They think like documentation, you just read things and you should understand them. But I get asleep reading documentation. And when I was writing documentation, I was using Control-C, Control-V too. So every use case looked exactly like the previous one. Oh, they look so well aligned and professional, but it's so boring for the eye. I mean, you're going to sleep before getting to page 20. it doesn't really work. Boredom will kill the learning. So the process instead is don't explain that much to the developers. Have them figure out how to solve the puzzle. Drop the puzzle in the face of the developers, and we are good puzzle solvers. Like, why do you advertise before selling? Because if I don't, I'm not gonna sell any ticket. Oh, well, thanks. Now I know. And they're getting into smart thinking. But if you just drop them atop of a lot of stuff in a boring way, well, I will try to deliver without understanding. I cannot guarantee this recipe to work in every domain. I mean, some domains are born boring, and there is no way to make them exciting. So, but I'm using this also for something about accounting. So I'm really close to the extreme zone.
Yeah, that is, I would say the same thing. That is the extreme. But yeah, I think I'm not sure if I read this in one of your articles or movies. If it's not you, but it's still valid. Software development is a learning process, and working code is the side effect.
Yeah, this was not an article, but just a sentence, and then plus a few presentation to support it. I mean, the thing that it really works with this sentence, it's short. It's easy to remember and could be a good driving principle. It's not always true. Like some projects can be boring. Like your next goal is to develop a customer list or a phone book. I mean, I don't have to learn that much about the phone book. I just have to deliver and make it beautiful. But for most of the project, the impediment is the learning, the complexity, being sure we got the things right, and then while implementing them right, that's something that's what we are paid for. But understanding them right, oh, that's a different trick, and there's a lot of improvement that we can play in this area.
Indeed, it's funny as we approach the end of the day and we're looking forward to tomorrow. I have in my head with event storming. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, it works very well for event source systems.
Absolutely.
And then tomorrow we will have Greg Young talking about why event source systems fail.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of reasons for this, but well, that's let me say that there's a lot of Greg's brain and conversation I had with Greg in the past behind EventStorming from a conversation we had when he was teaching a class in Bologna a few years ago, and we were sitting by the pool, and I was drawing something about how he was petitioning, in fact, in commands, events, and read model. That was coming from a conversation from Greg. And then he was doing something slightly similar, but then I understood something different. I ended up doing something huge and majestic. I remember his face when he looked like the event storming I was doing, and it was like I was not thinking about anything like 10 meters, because I wanted to see the whole thing end to end, and I just didn't want to have any scope limitation. And the grammars might be different, many other things. But yes, then it plays incredibly well with event source system, and that's actually one of the best way to discover the logic behind it and make sure that event sourcing is fitting with the business model, which was the ultimate goal of domain-driven design, by the way, speaking the business language, implementing the business need, and it turns out that ubiquitous language it works better if it's event-based rather than noun-based.
Yeah, indeed, as we end up modeling behavior, that's what we want.
Yep, and with less ambiguity. And yeah, some of the business think that they have to teach us how to design our database tables. And no, that's not the purpose. Like, what if I don't have database tables? Okay, so that's what I like of event sourcing a lot. It's just like completely blasting away the rules of the game, and then we need to have a different conversation, because we are still designing very efficient system, actually many times more efficient, but not playing with the standard rules. And so, well, I'm giving you the entity relationship diagram as a requirement. Oh, no, this doesn't work anymore with us.
But it is, I don't know, maybe I was the only one doing this, but I think 20 years ago when you were starting a project, the first thing you would draw up was the database schema and the relationship, right? So that's how we worked at that time.
That was the main driver. That was not the way I started. I was actually starting from the class diagram and well, having a little bit of sequence too, and then I was designing the database as a consequence. But I started my project in a greenfield scenario, so I could start from scratch, and I designed my own scratch. And it turned out that our database was non-conventional. It was actually really close to be a document-based database, but I'm talking about exactly 20 years ago, and document-based database didn't exist. We just used XML as a way to visualize documents in a append-only fashion that was really close to event sourcing. And it was great, but we could make it happen because it was a greenfield and nobody else was looking inside our database. We didn't have any trade-off. But for most of the developers, you don't have the luxury of designing a new system from scratch. You get what you get. You're just expanding the database with a few extra tables and use cases, and you have to comply to the architecture that was designed before you. And that maybe was not designed. The person before you was just a person that got something from a person before and made a few changes. And there is no creator at the beginning, or there is no elders giving us the database schema and then flying away into space. Yeah, it's just like people like us, maybe with a little less information, doing their best with what they had at that moment, and then calling this architecture. Sorry, I'm getting sarcastic, but it's the end of the day.
No, but yeah, you see this from time to time in software projects, and yeah, there's that's why I don't know, software modernization is a thing nowadays, and people are putting effort in redesigning these sort of systems.
Yep.
But yeah, it's fun, and yeah, we would keep talking about this. I think for at least another hour, but unfortunately we're out of time. But yeah, let's hope we can continue this at another Codecamp edition. I would love to have you again.
I hope so. I mean, in person is still a lot better, but I hope we made a good thing today. So thank you for inviting me, and thank you for the question. I love this conversation, and all the best for tomorrow. And goodbye to anyone who's still left looking at this old man with the beard.